Arguably the most globally recognized mythical creature from Australia is the Bunyip, an important staple in Aboriginal folklore. This amphibious being poses a threat to all who travel near inland waters. Lurking in lagoons, deep water holes, swamps, and rivers, this predatory creature presents a clear danger to humans and animals alike.
Generation X Paranormal. Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everybody.
So today is kind of an interesting one. You know, we're used to dealing with things here at home. I say home in the States is where I'm kind of talking about. And I think for me, usually, we've got a lot of cryptids here. This episode, by the way, is about cryptid. It's pretty cool. But we talk about cryptids, of course you got the big ones, you got Bigfoot and, even overseas you got Loch Ness, Yeti and all the other ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But typically those are kind of really the only ones that I hear about. That doesn't mean that anybody else doesn't hear about them. It's just the only ones that I know of anyway. But today we got a really special treat because this one comes from the land down under. And if you don't know what that is, it's Australia, by the way. But at any rate, we're pretty excited about this one. We've got some folks out in Australia that do watch and listen to us, so we're pretty excited to get it out to you guys. I'm sure you guys got a lot more information about it than we do.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to put together as much as we can. Nicole, of course, is a top-notch researcher, so she got together, what she could, and we're gonna go from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so kind of moving along. The Australian cryptid known as Bunyip, which is funny because I think we looked that up a few times just to make sure we're saying it right. Yeah, comes from Aboriginal folklore. It is described as looking like an amphibian, having a long neck, round head, and a body like a manatee, which is it's interesting when you think about a body of a manatee. It is said to have a very stinky smell, and it also says to make a roaring noise before it eats its prey, which I find that interesting because if you make a roaring noise, you would have to be probably already captured, because if I heard a roaring noise, I would try to run.
Well, yeah, but by then they got you.
It's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sometimes it's described as a dog-like or seal-like creature. They have been described as being a big as a horse and as small as a dog. That's
very varied.
Yeah, that's quite a scale.
There's a lot of varied descriptions.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, that makes sense. They may have flippers, fangs, tusks, 1 or 2 eyes, shaggy fur, scales, or horns. Basically, it could be anything.
Basically. And I think it's, from what they see, they're not close enough to really tell. And anybody that does get close enough
doesn't live to tell.
Right.
Right. Well, the Bunyip's hind legs are incredibly strong. Its 4 legs are longer than its body, which kind of makes me feel like a spider type look. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't say it articulates that way, but it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
And natives claim that the Bunyip uses its long arms and legs to kill its prey by hugging it to death. Wow.
Like squeezing.
Yeah, it's like smothering somebody.
Mm-hmm.
When it's in the water, it swims like a frog. And when it's on shore, it stands up tall, which it could be around 12 to 13 feet. Yikes.
Well, that's where the long legs,
Jeez.
arms come in.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, if I saw something 14 feet coming at me, I probably wouldn't survive. I have a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
The Bunyip is rumored to lurk around swamps, billabongs, and creeks in the Australian outback. It is almost completely water dwelling.
So that's why I think they can't get a good look at it, because it's always in the water.
Yeah.
Mm.
According to Aboriginal folklore, the Bunyip waits in the water for passing livestock, women, and children to attack and devour. That's pretty point blank.
Mm-hmm.
The word Bunyip itself is from an Aboriginal Australian word. Closest English word would be demon, devil, or evil spirit. That's kind of frightening. But according to those familiar with the Wemba, the Australian Aboriginal language from which the word is derived, even those are probably inaccurate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's sort of just like a quick background. Again, those folks that live out in Australia, you guys probably know a lot more than we do. But I find it interesting that there's so many different
descriptions.
Different descriptions and accountings. It would make it really difficult to, I guess, to spot. Well, I mean, honestly, any of those would be scary all on its own. But
that's why I think they're not getting close enough.
Sure. Well, it's like Loch Ness, right? I mean, a lot of people think they know what it looks like, but
yeah, but it's not like Loch Ness.
Well, no, it's the Bunyip.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to just skip right over that. So there's been multiple sightings.
Right.
So I'm just going to go with the first one. And this was a man named Jacques Marquette. French.
Jacques Marquette.
He was a French missionary, and this goes back to 1637.
Wow. Okay.
So this is the first recorded thing that I could find. Obviously, probably with the Aborigines.
Yeah.
There's earlier than that,
Sure.
but as far as like documented.
Right.
But and this is a quote from him.
Okay.
So it's going to sound like old language talk, okay?
Okay. Sounds
That's
good.
the best way to say it. Okay.
All right.
So, quote, while skirting some rocks, which by their height and length inspire awe, we saw upon one of them 2 painted monsters, which at first made us afraid, and upon which the boldest savages dare not long rest their eyes, which I apologize for him even saying that. They are as large as a calf. They have horns on their heads like those of a deer, a horrible look, red eyes, a beard like a tiger's, a face somewhat like a man's, a body covered with scales, and so long a tail that it winds all around the body, passing above the head and going back between the legs, ending in a fish's tail.
Yuck. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's very descriptive.
Yeah, no kidding. It's not like, like he just spotted something and said, oh, it's this man with some scales. I mean, he's got some detail there.
Yeah. Extreme detail.
Oof.
I mean, it sounds like a mythical creature reading that description. To me.
It does. I can see that, and then I'll probably talk a little bit more about this later, but being half of a culture that is often considered savage, and that has a lot of folklore behind it. And I'm going to get into what my personal beliefs are about this later, but I find it interesting that this is the first written accounting, but I guarantee it in Aboriginal folklore. And if there are Aboriginal folks that actually do watch our show, please, definitely let us know. But yeah, I find that interesting that you're right. That term just seems kind of off-putting, but you're right. It was way back 1600s.
That's what they said, but I'm apologizing for it now.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that's the first one.
Okay.
So the next one that I could find came from about 1818.
Okay.
Some explorers named James Meehan and Hamilton Hume. They discovered large bones in Lake Bathurst in New South Wales.
Okay.
These are just bones.
Right.
They didn't see anything.
Right.
But they didn't call the creature a bunyip.
No, yeah.
Okay. But they described the remains similar to like a manatee or hippopotamus. So we don't know for sure that's what it was, but it needs to be mentioned that they found these bones but they had, described it previously as like looking like a manatee. So
I mean, it's up to,
you got to take any little thing like that and look at it.
I mean, I don't know too much about the type of wildlife that is there, but is a manatee an Australian? That's what I don't know. And I apologize. Are there manatees in Australia? And are there? I would imagine there probably is.
I think so.
And hippopotamus. So it wouldn't be off to think that that's just a skeleton of one of those. But you're right. Since it was described at one point that it could have been manatee shaped or looked like one, you're right. It has to be considered.
Right. So the next one, there was this English convict, okay, and he escaped a penal colony near present-day Melbourne, claimed to have seen the Bunyip back in the early 1800s while he was living among the Aboriginal people. So he was living with the Aborigines at the time. According to William Buckley's account, the Bunyip was an, quote, extraordinary amphibious animal with gray feathers covering its back, and it killed and devoured a woman from his adoptive community.
Wow.
So that means somebody's seen it.
Right.
And obviously maybe they saw her getting attacked or she just disappeared. I'm not really, there's no clarity there.
Sure.
But obviously someone saw it to have that description.
Yeah. And
that's the second time with the feathers.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. That almost sounds like dinosaur-like, doesn't it?
You know, and I remember, you know, you think of like Jurassic Park and stuff like that. You know, they talk about the dinosaurs as potentially being ancestors of the birds.
Well, yeah.
So,
but also surviving. Like that's one of the things about Loch Ness that they said.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But, a fragment of a leg bone was discovered on the bank of Lake Collingulak. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. In southwestern Victoria in July of 1845. Okay. The bone was not decayed, suggesting the animal had died recently. And the diameter of the knee joint was more than 20 centimeters.
Wow, that is a big knee joint.
That's big.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really big.
That's huge.
Many thought the bone was from a dinosaur, though it is still unknown what species the enormous bone came from.
But if there was no decay.
Right. Unless it was preserved.
Like fossilized?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
They mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Alleged encounters with a bunyip were also reported in New South Wales. Okay. Where a skull thought to be from a bunyip was found in Murrumbidgee.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm
That sounds right. Murrumbidgee?
Murrumbidgee.
Sure.
In 1846. And they displayed it in the Sydney Museum.
Okay.
Because they suggested it was, you know, from like a deformed cow or platypus. But that's the thing is they didn't have any testing and stuff at that point in time to figure it out.
And I would wonder if they just immediately would go to, well, it could potentially be bunyip. I doubt that would be.
Well, yeah, I think they put it in there like, oh, it could be this, you know.
Yeah.
In 1847, so the next year,
the
Sydney Morning Herald reported an eyewitness encounter between a herdsman and a bunyip.
Okay.
The man said it was as big as a calf with, quote, large ears, which it pricked up when it perceived him, had a thick mane of hair from the head down the neck, and 2 large tusks. He turned to run away, and this creature, equally alarmed, ran off too with an awkward, shambling gallop. So that description to me sounds almost like a hippo.
Yeah.
Also kind of like a walrus.
Yeah. With the tusks.
Yeah. And then with because the ears sound like the hippo and the running like a hippo. The tusks like a walrus, but then the hair thing is throwing me off.
Yeah. I mean, you could imagine there would be, like any living creature, there could be some kind of like deformity. Right.
Yeah, but that's a lot of deformity.
That's quite a deformity. Interesting.
Yeah. An image of a bunyip drawn by an indigenous man who claimed to have seen one in Victoria was originally published in the Geelong Advertiser and shows the immense size of the fabled beast. And I have a drawing of that, so we'll show it.
Sure. Put on the video. Yeah, for sure.
The encounter was described by a Mr. Edwin Stoculaire. I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
And he was an artist, and he became like what they call a naturalist. So he, you know, lived among nature and would travel. And he decided to sail down the Murray and Goulburn rivers in New South Wales in a canvas boat.
Whoa. Okay.
Brave, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
He apparently spent much of 1856 and 57 doing this while he was also like, I guess he was an artist, so he did sketches.
Okay, so he's traveling, sketching what he sees type stuff, yeah.
And he would make these dioramas that he was, he would work on and then display, basically.
Okay.
And he was going to display these in England of all the ones that he took in Australia.
Okay.
Okay. It was reported in the Moreton Bay Free Press of April 15th, 1857.
Okay.
Although what he saw actually happened in March.
Okay.
So he saw it and then it took a month or so,
Sure.
which back then.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not instantaneous.
not sending
like
text
it is
or
now.
anything, yeah.
Yeah. So in 1857, in an article titled, quote, "The Bunyip," very clever.
Yeah, clever naming.
Right.
Is that how we're going to name this episode? The Bunyip.
A newspaper reported on the drawings made by Edwin Stockilair. Amongst the latter drawings, we noticed a likeness of the bunyip, or rather a view of the neck and shoulders of the animal. Mr. Stockilair informs us that the bunyip is a large freshwater seal having two small paddles or fins attached to the shoulders, a long swan-like neck, a head like a dog, and a curious bag hanging under the jaw.
Bag? Curious bag?
Like a turkey waddle or something? Or what's that one? The elephant seal? Don't they have that?
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of thing. Okay.
Interesting to call it a bag, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Continuing on. Resembling the pouch of the pelican. Oh, there you go. I should have just finished that.
Mop, mop.
The animal is covered with hair, like the platypus, and the color is a glossy black.
Okay. Glossy black.
How is hair glossy? Well, I guess it could be.
If it's water dwelling, it's going to look wet all the time, I guess.
It's weird.
It is weird. It's weird to spot it out as saying glossy.
Yeah. But I guess it's just shining. Maybe the sun was shining. So Mr. Stockilair saw no less than 6 of these curious animals at different times. That's 6.
That is a lot.
His boat was within 30 feet of one, near McGuire's Punt on the Goulburn, and he fired at the bunyip but did not succeed in capturing him.
Good Lord. Talk about taking your life in your own hands.
Well, yeah. The smallest appeared to be about 5 feet in length, and the largest exceeded 15 feet. So that's the largest we've heard of.
And he shot at this thing.
I guess.
Dumb.
The head of the largest was the size of a bullock's head. What is a bullock?
I don't know what that is. I always hear people say bullocks, but I don't know what that is.
And 3 feet out of the water.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
After taking a sketch of the animal, Mr. Stockilair showed it to several of the Goulburn tribes, so those must be Aborigines in the area,
right?
Who declared that the picture was Bunyip's brother, meaning that it was a duplicate or a likeness of the bunyip. So like the bunyip, but a little bit different, is what I'm guessing.
Okay.
Is what they meant.
That makes sense.
The animals moved against the current at the rate of about 7 miles an hour, and Mr. Stockilair stated that he could have approached closer, but he was deterred by the stories of the natives concerning the power and the fury of the bunyip.
Oh, but he'll shoot at it.
Well, yeah, but that's at a distance.
Okay.
And by the fact that his gun had only a single barrel.
All right.
And his boat was of a very frail description. He was in a canvas boat.
Right. Okay, I get it. But seriously, I mean, here's the part that I find this interesting. And I'm probably dumbing this down a bit because I need to wrap my own head around it. But you describe this guy, he's described as a naturalist. He's an artist. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you think of this like, I don't know, you think of it in my mind, and it's probably not right, but you think of like this guy with a goatee, and he's sitting there and he's, sketching stuff up, and I'm just gonna get up in the morning, I'm gonna sketch things, and and he's gonna take a gun and shoot at some 15-foot thing that he has no idea about. And by the way,
6 of them.
And there's 6 of them. I mean,
well, people back then were more like frontiersmen.
Sure.
Even an artist was kind of rugged and, would do stuff like that. But
I don't know. I guess I find it hard to believe that somebody who's an artist who wants to be a naturalist and wants to get in with nature spots something that he's never seen before in his first.
He wants evidence. That's what it was.
Fair enough. I'll move past it, but I don't know. It just seems weird that an artist would do that, and that wants to be a naturalist. That
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
And I did search extensively for this sketch that he said he made, because he did go to England and he showed it off, but some of his work has disappeared now. So I mean, some of his other art, his drawings and stuff of that time period in Australia have survived, but not that. It's like it disappeared. So
that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And when you search for his name in the Bunyip drawings come up, but it's not his. It's just other ones. So
were they of nature?
His
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, so at least he is doing what he said he was doing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since the 1800s, scientists have been trying to explain what the true origins of the Bunyip could possibly be. Some scientists believe that the creature was a little more than an Aboriginal cultural memory of a now extinct animals like Diprotodon, is what I'm thinking, which roamed Australia during the last ice age. So I guess they're just thinking that it's kind of a leftover dinosaur. Yeah. This theory, first proposed by Dr. George Bennett in 1871, but continued by modern era paleontologist Pat Vickers-Rich and geologist Neil Archibald in their book, The History of Australia's Vertebrate Paleontology, in the early 1990s. So obviously they're trying to further that claim. So Vickers-Rich and Archibald believe that the settlers saw a bear with me, a dormorn ithridage. I don't know. I know I'm butchering that, but anyway, it's now an extinct prehistoric bird that was dubbed the demon duck by modern paleontologists. Demon duck. I mean,
for a scientist to say demon, yeah,
that's kind of wild. Demon duck. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. Ducks, you get close enough to them, they try to come after you. They're kind of demon duck anyway, but that's just my thing.
More like geese.
Geese
are.
Yeah, there's a story behind that, by the way. We went to go visit her uncle for the very first time. Keep in mind, I'm more of a city rat. I've only become more country in the last, 10 years or so. But we pull up to her uncle's house, and he had a goose. But of course, me being the idiot that I am, we walk up there and I said, "Look at the size of that duck." Anyway, in 2017, scientist Carl Brandt again speculated on the Bunyip's possible avian origin. Writing for the Australian BirdLife, the scientists claimed that the Aboriginal people had likely encountered a bird known as the cassowary, which resembles an American wild turkey more than it resembles a mythical water creature in the deep. A wild turkey.
Yeah. I mean, that it looks more like that. I mean, people are just guessing.
Yeah. Anyway, a manatee and a wild turkey. Okay. The southern cassowary is described in an 1848 article in the Geelong Advisor and Squatters Advocate. I find that a very interesting title.
It is.
Newspaper. It describes of a bright blue egg, a colorful chest, and a beak with serrated edges like the bone of a stingray. Yikes. Immediately reminded Brandt of the southern cassowary and its entire possibility that is what the Aboriginals encountered so many years ago. I mean, sure.
I mean, possibly, if they never got close enough. That's what I'm saying. It depends on how close they actually got to this thing.
I mean,
and there are instances of, native tribes, even our own here, that, sometimes they go a little overboard,
sure,
on their mythical creatures, but there's some basis of fact there.
Sure is.
And the fact that it's not just the Aboriginal people talking about it. You've got sites by these other explorers and stuff that said they saw the same thing. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I think, scientists always try to explain, well, it's got to be this.
Right. Well,
but it's not always the case.
That's a problem. Now, being somebody who is who does appreciate science and who does appreciate these things, you know, you can only take science so far.
Right.
And if you pigeonhole yourself just into a scientific explanation, then you don't have a show about the paranormal.
Right. And a turkey's not 15 foot long.
No. Anyway,
Right.
the most commonly accepted explanation for the creature was provided in 1933 by Australian geologist named Charles Fenner. Fenner paid close attention to the description of the creature with a long neck, round head, and a body like a manatee, and came to a pretty simple conclusion in his world-renowned book, Bunyips and Billabongs. The cryptid was most likely based on a southern elephant seals and leopard seals that frequently make their way up the Murray and Darling rivers. I mean,
I could see that more likely. I don't know where the hair's coming in though, because they still don't. But those elephant seals have that.
Yeah,
I mentioned it earlier.
Right.
You know,
the bag.
The bag. Yeah, and
Right.
they're huge, and they do make sounds, and they're big, and they do kind of like stand up.
Yeah, but 14 feet.
They're pretty big.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're that big, but you know, when you're terrified of something,
Sure.
it seems bigger than what you think. And if they're at a distance, they could be misjudging it.
Yeah.
And if part of it's in the water.
No, that makes sense. And water does kind of give you like a refraction, so it makes things look bigger than they really are. Okay, I'll give that its due for sure. It is believed that the bunyip made booming and roaring noises when it was told to kill people, especially children and women. Okay. The origin of this belief could be found in the appearance of seals that were far upstream from their regular course and booming noise of the bitten marsh bird. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a bittern marsh
Bittern.
bird.
Sorry.
Not the bitten one.
Mouth rolled.
The bittern marsh bird.
Okay.
So it makes like a booming sound.
What is a booming sound? I don't know what that is.
Well, you know, when you see these elephant seals, you know how they're like when they land on the ground and they kind of roar. They make that roaring sound, you know?
Yeah, okay. I follow.
So they're combining the two sounds together. You know, like when you're out in a wetland like that.
Sure.
And you hear different animal sounds. They're probably putting all that together and thinking it's one thing when it could be possibly multiple things.
Sure. I can concede that for sure. Okay.
I just didn't know that they had elephant seals in Australia. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when you think about it, their ecosystem, they kind of have everything there.
They do.
They've got forests, they've got ocean, they've got desert. So they've kind of got their own world ecosystem right there. Everything that's kind of represented throughout the world could inevitably be there, I guess.
Well, and it sounded like to me that most of these, you know, witness statements came from New South Wales.
Okay.
So that must be just a marshy area.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I've never been there. I've been to the southern part of Australia and I've been to Sydney. And I didn't see anything like that. Of course, they're just big cities. So the most we saw were just kind of ocean and shores. So I really don't have a point of reference for that.
So then where exactly is the outback supposed to be located then?
Now, keep in mind, this is me doing stupid math because I've only been there twice. I think it's more in the center, I think. So I was
that's more like the desert type area.
Yeah, more the desert. Now, I think Aboriginal obviously live pretty much everywhere in that, but I think the outback or the bush, so to speak, is sort of in that area. Okay. Of course, I could be 100% wrong, and if that's the case, I'm terribly sorry. But keep in mind, I went to Sydney, and I went to Fremantle, and I went to Perth, and then we went to Hobart in Tasmania. So I just got to see big cities, right?
Yeah.
But that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, so this is being seen wherever the marshy part is.
Right.
Which I'm guessing is all New South Wales.
I think it's towards the south. I could be horribly mistaken, though. I'll put a map up on the video just so we can get a better clarity on it.
Yeah, yeah. So, as far as today, I mean, what I saw is that you guys can, comment and let me know. But from what I saw is that most people in Australia don't necessarily believe in this thing anymore.
Right.
And they kind of use this word bunyip as like a description for like in a derogatory term against other people, basically. Now I don't know about as far as the Aboriginal people.
Right.
I would imagine that they still believe, at least to an extent, because that those legends and stuff passed down.
Right.
But many First Nations stories of the bunyip describe the creature as a sharp-tusked man-eater.
Yikes. Okay.
But in 1934, a sculpture by the Australian artist Gerald Lewers, the bunyip is a mysterious but not necessarily terrifying presence. It resembles a grazing animal, recalling a reconstruction of the extinct Diprotodon, which was a grazing marsupial that lived in Australia until about 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
Fossils of Diprotodon were sometimes interpreted as the remains of bunyips.
Okay.
So they have this sculpture, and we have a picture of it. I put it up, and that's kind of what's in the,
right,
museums and stuff. Well, what do you think? Do you think there's this cryptid out there that may look different at different times? Do you think it's complete hogwash? Do you think there's a combination? What is your opinion?
So here's my opinion. And it's going to be a bit of a lengthy one, and I apologize. So
sorry, everybody.
Hey, but anyway, so I believe in a lot of different things when it comes to this. I believe that could the Aboriginal people be seeing this? Because remember, they've been there this entire time before it was settled by penal colonies. And remember, Australia in its history was settled by penal colonies. They had I think what the English and some of the other people would send their people to Australia to basically run these huge penal colonies for people who were, not so savory.
What they considered their criminals.
Right. They're criminals. So the Aboriginal were there long before that. And I think that, and of course, this is completely depending on what you believe. And I don't want to step on anybody's toes as far as life cycle and things that evolve. I know that's kind of a touchy word sometimes, but I'm just going to use it loosely. I think could there have been a creature during that time frame that could have sort of fit that bill a little bit? Absolutely. I'm sure that maybe this bird or this marsupial they were talking about went through a series of evolution, and they would sometimes mistakenly say that's bunyip, or maybe they believe that is bunyip. And I think during these times, Aboriginal people, anytime you live, in that type of culture where it's tribal, things happen. People go missing. And I'm sure it's very difficult to understand and try to wrap their heads around it, especially during that time. So they kind of needed something to, I don't want to say blame, but something that would sort of fit that boogeyman persona.
Yeah. I can see that.
And that happens a lot, even in Native culture here. I think that also lends into a little bit in what I believe in potentially shape-shifting. If you follow, Northern American Native folklore, and it's not just here, it's worldwide shape-shifting. They just call it different things.
Right.
You look at these things and you say, okay, could it have shape-shifted? If you believe in that sort of thing, could this be a shapeshifter? Yeah, I mean, potentially. We can't concede the fact that if we are going to agree it exists in North America or anywhere else in the world, then we can't arbitrarily discount that it couldn't happen here in this case. Again, that completely resides on if you believe in such a thing. I also think that it is such a vast area. We just talked about how many different, some deserts, some, we discussed that. There's still so many creatures that even in North America that I guarantee you we've never seen. There are parts of Michigan and there are even parts of Missouri that I'm sure there are creatures out there that we have never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Well, even in the depths of the ocean.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like the giant squid, we always we expected it to be there, and then lo and behold, it happened. So could this be one of those? I mean, potentially.
Right.
I think that so many things can be true at the same time. Do I think it's this huge man eater? I would imagine that humans are stupid. I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. I'm sure we were doing something dumb one day and we're trying to provoke whatever animal this was, and it probably did what it was supposed to do and level set expectation.
Well, and like if it's an elephant seal, they could kill you easily.
Course.
They're they're large.
Right. Now,
and they make a sound.
Yeah.
They make a roaring sound.
That's true.
I mean, for me, I think if it's not something like that, if it's actually based on something we already know about, my first guess is the elephant seal.
Sure. Or maybe like a I don't know, like a mutation of an elephant seal or something like that, or you just think straight up elephant seal?
I just think straight up elephant seal. However, some of the weird descriptions and I don't know, the hair, like I don't know. That's the thing that's throwing me off from this is why do they think they're seeing hair? Because when I think about what an elephant seal looks like, there's no part of me that even from a distance would that look like hair.
Right. And that's kind of why I said the potential
like
of
the feathers.
Yeah. Which is why I said maybe like a mutation of the elephant seal or.
But a bird, it would.
Oh, yeah. A bird sure would.
Unless it is some prehistoric animal that's still hiding in the depths.
Yeah.
Or at least it was at one point in time. It may not exist anymore.
Right.
It's probably gone extinct by now. Like in today's. But back in the 1600s when that guy saw what he saw, the French guy.
Right. I mean,
could it have still been here? It could have still been here.
Well, and you just talked about the fact that there have been no recent sightings, at least not recorded or anybody said anything. Now, of course, the Aboriginal, they may still have sightings or things that they have said that they've seen. But as far
as at least access that I was able to find.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's not being talked about in Australia.
Right. And again, anybody who is in Australia, Aboriginal or anyone else.
Have you seen one?
Yeah, have you seen one? I mean, this is kind
I'd be curious to know, honestly.
This would be a great spot in which you could, email us up and say, hey, no, we've actually got an accounting from this date or anything, pictures, whatever you've got. By all means, info@gxparanormal.com. Send them our way. We'd love to see them. But yeah, I mean, go on.
Well, no, I mean, I just think, I just see this as kind of almost in related to the Loch Ness monster because, there has been multiple sightings. That one's been multiple sightings over the years. And that's an episode I can't wait to do.
We may need 2 parts on that one.
Yeah. But their main guess is that it was like a dinosaur that somehow didn't die and was still living in the loch, which is a lake. For anybody in Scotland, they say loch. And I think that it could be related here. I mean, you think about these remote areas in certain countries where these animals can hide in these marshes and stuff, and you've really only got you've got the Aborigines that could see it, but most people aren't going to believe them. They're going to think they're being hysterical or whatever. But they're the closest source to that. So if they believe that this thing is real, I'm more keen to believe them.
Well, sure.
Just like our native tribes in America, they have, these stories that they pass down generation to generation. And we're starting to find out now, people that have gone to investigate, oh, they were right this whole time. We just thought they had all these crazy, witchy stories about this or that, and it's all made up. We're going to prove it by science that it doesn't exist. Well, now science is trying, proving that they were right.
Well, so I mean,
I don't want to say that it's completely made up, especially with anything we talk about, but any cryptid, because they could hide
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
there may be explanations for certain things, but you don't have an explanation for everything.
No, absolutely not. And that's kind of more to the point. I mean, only because this is Hollywood eyes, and I apologize, but I was a big fan of the Mel Gibson movies, Mad Max and all those. Well, they were filmed in Australia, and they were filmed in very desolate areas. And if you watch any of those things, I mean, there's nothing there. Now, granted, this was a long time ago, so it could be built up by now, but I think there's so much of Australia, especially in the outback, that is so, I guess, not really studied, or if studied, just there's so much still there, So
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, it could have been that it existed for some time. It may or may not still exist, but we may run into, anthropologists may run into this when they're digging something up out there.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
And I'm ashamed to admit it. I don't know anything. The most I know about Australia, and I apologize, is from Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie was big when I was a kid, and I loved it, because it was my first glimpse.
Right.
And you saw the crocodiles, and, it was my first introduction to an Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
And, the big snakes and stuff. And,
sure,
they really depicted that.
Yeah.
Like how desolate. And I liked Mick Dundee because, he saved the kangaroos, because those guys were hunting there. They were going to kill the kangaroos, and he came and, got rid of them. And
that's a knife.
I'm a nature protector, so an animal protector. So I was happy with that movie. So I apologize. That's the only reason I really know much about it. But, with not being there and actually seeing it,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's...
You know what you see, and that's what you hear. So,
yeah, of course. And you're somewhat bound by that, No, that makes sense.
But this was something that I had never heard of before.
Yeah.
And that there's every country has their own things.
Just like Bigfoot,
Yeah, like we have
different...
like Chupacabra, stuff like that. Those are the big ones, Loch Ness Monster, those are the big ones. But these are like the local ones that only certain local people are going to know. And I ran across it, and I'm like, that's very interesting. I'd like to talk about that.
Well, the thing with cryptids, and I will say this every time we do a cryptid show, because it's true, it is the only facet of paranormal that has ever, well, I shouldn't say ever been proven, but it's the only one that science has proven. Because, we always assumed there was a giant squid, found it. We didn't know about the Komodo dragon. It was always one of those things where it was like, oh, Komodo dragon. Well, they went to Komodo Island, and guess what they found?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not unprecedented that it could be found.
Well, yeah, they're still finding new species of frogs and like in the jungle and stuff like that. So I'm never going to say no, that there's no way that this thing exists. I may be more keen to believe something, but this is not out of the wheelhouse.
No, not at all.
I mean, my only opinion is if it's a real animal, it's probably the elephant seal. That makes the most sense. But I don't know, the feather thing is throwing me off, and like the head like a dog and this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, elephant seal doesn't look like a dog in any way. But that was the first thing when they said the bag. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, the elephant seal has that. Yeah, like a turkey.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's why,
which is a bird
with the turkey.
Yeah,
the gobble or whatever they say.
The gobble.
The gobble. I always call it the gobble. The waddle.
Well, folks, I mean, here we are again. It's one of those things where we sort of just bring you a story, bring you some accountings of something that's out there, that's been reported. We're happy to do something that's not stateside, which is great. We do have Australian viewers and listeners, so we're excited to bring that. But yeah, I mean, again, I said it in the show, info@gxparanormal.com. If you have any questions about it, or if you have seen it, or you just want to send us pictures of just that, by the way, nothing else. If you want to send us pictures of that, or just want to reach out to us, that'd be great about this particular episode.
Or if you have a cryptid where you live.
That's right.
And you want to talk about it, email us too. We can have you on the show and
absolutely
and tell us all about it, because there's multiple out there that most of us don't know about.
Yeah, I'm sure there's for every story out there, some people can blame that on cryptid. Different paranormal things, even alien stuff. They've even said some cryptid things beyond that. So,
oh yeah, there's a deep dive you can go into down that way.
Look up mantis. But anyway, listen, real quick, we're absolutely proud and happy to see our views and everything are going up, and wherever you find us at, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, any of those, if you would please follow us or subscribe or whatever it is for that platform, that'd really help us out. We do get a lot of views, which is fantastic, but it would really help us out if you guys would actually do that. So if you could, that'd be great. Aside from that, anything else about this one?
Nope.
All right.
It's up to you to decide whether you believe it's real or not.
Yeah, for sure. Other than that, we'll see you guys next time, and have a good day.
Good day, mate.
Bye.
Had to say it.
Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Check out our YouTube at Generation X Paranormal. Also, check out our Facebook, Generation X Paranormal Podcast. Love to have you. See you then.